Imagine the impact of a typhoon. Typhoons can develop quickly, bringing powerful winds, storm surges, and potential flash floods. Communities are impacted immediately. Populations are displaced. Infrastructure and houses are damaged. Land and crops are destroyed, and livelihoods are ruined. When the Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies begin to help those affected, emergency needs assessments are fundamental in understanding the impact of a crisis and its humanitarian consequences. To start the assessment, some essential information must be identified. The current and forecasted priority geographical locations, the current and forecasted affected population groups, and the current severity of sectoral needs. To work this information out, data must be collected from a variety of reliable sources. The data is then analysed in a systematic way, and the analysis is used to produce an initial assessment, which forms the basis of an emergency appeal. Once more data and analysis has been incorporated, an effective plan of action can be structured. The plan of action can be revised as soon as sectoral assessments have been conducted in the field. We start with the information that already exists, then organise a plan to collect what's missing. What already exists is called secondary data. This is data prepared by others. It's a mixture of pre-disaster information and post-disaster information. To complete our understanding, we look at primary data. This is data collected in a coordinated way from our own emergency response teams on the ground. The Red Cross and Red Crescent network's key strength is its proximity and access to affected populations. So through the network of volunteers, our national societies are in a unique position to provide reliable primary data to the humanitarian community. As we start to accumulate the primary and secondary data, it's inserted into an analytical framework. The framework acts like a closet, storing and organizing data across multiple sectors for simple classification, retrieval, and analysis. In particular, pre-crisis capacity vulnerabilities and lessons learned, any operational constraints, the scope and scale of the crisis, the humanitarian conditions of the affected people, and the capacity to respond to their needs by all the different actors. Injecting all primary and secondary data into a framework in this way makes it easier for us to get a sense of what's actually known about a crisis and what still remains unknown, the so-called information gaps. Through a process defined in the analysis plan, the framework gradually transforms the original data into useful information. Information which can help us make a better assessment of three main areas: how the crisis impacts communities, their assets and services, the severity of conditions of the affected population and the ways they are recovering, any gaps which may exist in terms of response capacity and information. This method of analysis enables us to understand the disaster's impact throughout all three emergency needs assessments phases, and it ultimately facilitates a transition to long-term programming and recovery. The relevant national society and its Red Cross and Red Crescent partners use the needs assessment process to define the potential response options and come up with a solid emergency plan of action. This involves evaluating the priorities of the affected communities, working out the strategy of the relevant national societies, assessing the feasibility of each potential response option, identifying existing capacity and the resources which could be mobilized, and collaborating with humanitarian partners and governments so we're all involved in the most coordinated and effective response possible. Ultimately, only by accumulating and analysing evidence through the emergency needs assessment process can the Red Cross and Red Crescent network provide relevant, adequate and timely support. to vulnerable people affected by ongoing crises and disasters.